Hey everyone, this is Moni Castaneda, and today we're going to be talking about 5 strategies that you can use from the Feng Shui viewpoint so that you can navigate these coronavirus times better, so that you can keep your peace, so that you can control your emotions and have a happy time. Believe it or not, for a lot of people, this could be a time they remember with a lot of happiness. My husband said the other day, we're going to remember COVID 19 as such a beautiful time because we have been having amazing days. And you can too. And actually, I got to tell you, the feedback that I'm getting from all the people that have been my clients or have taken my courses, especially people who have trained to become consultants or are training, they're doing just fine. And I think it was 2 weeks ago when we met because my former and current clients and former and current students, we meet every Thursday at this time. And it was about 2 weeks that we were talking about the coronavirus, this whole situation. And I had consulted the I Ching on behalf of all of us about what we should do in order to navigate this time and with success, right? And one of the I Ching is the Chinese Book of Changes, which is an oracle, the only oracle that I use, because it doesn't predict the future. Instead, it tells you the possibilities, what it does an analysis of the present situation and gives you possibilities. And one of the changing lines, because part of the advice of the I Ching when we consulted it last time was literally this: do not feel guilty for doing well when other people are not doing well, and do not feel guilty if you profit from the misfortune of another person. And at the time when we heard that, we were kind of shocked. And we thought none of us would do that. None of us would ever profit from the misfortune of another person. That was the initial reaction. But later on, I tried, as I was interpreting or reading from the I Ching, I had come up with some scenario where somebody could have a misfortune and that could be a blessing to you, but you did not have any hand in creating that misfortune. And so we're not talking here about what some people did in Tennessee. They were in the national news, and I live in Tennessee, right? So these people early on, when the news started coming about the coronavirus from other countries, they went and hoarded all the hand sanitizer in East Tennessee, and then they were planning to sell it Amazon, and they were trying to sell like $2 hand sanitizer, $4 hand sanitizer for $8, $15, and $20 until Amazon canceled their accounts because they didn't want them to abuse the situation. So that's not what I'm talking about. But the advice from the I Ching was to not feel guilty because you're doing well, right? And it has become one of the most important pieces of advice in this time. Though at the time we thought, well, that is not really relevant. That might not apply to us. Maybe it'll apply to some of us, but not to all of us. But as time goes on, this feeling of guilt keeps creeping up for myself and for students and clients when you are doing so well. Like you're actually enjoying your time, you're taking advantage of your time, you're being productive. And at the same time, people start feeling guilty that they're well when so many people are suffering, right? And I have also had reports from clients that they're actually literally profiting from the misfortune of another. Not something they cause, but just things that happen around them. And they happen to be at the right time and the right place to actually do well during this time. And so let me tell you the story of a friend of my husband who owns a bakery. And his bakery sells not directly to consumers, but to restaurants. So, when you go to a restaurant and you order a sandwich, that bread would come from his bakery. Or if you go to a restaurant where you sit down and they give you bread and butter so that you are not too hungry while they bring your meal, that was his bread. And so guess what? All of the restaurants closed, right? And so for a little while, he didn't have any business, but he thought, I cannot accept this. I cannot have this. I have to do something different. So he went to all the grocery stores that were nearby where his bakery is, and he talked to one of them, and he said, he called them first and he said, how's your bread supply doing? Because if you're running low, I can help. And they told him, we're fine, we don't need you. And so he didn't believe it. And so he actually drove to the store and he found out their shelves were completely empty of bread. So like the person who picked up the phone was just lazy. We don't know. But so he asked to talk to the manager and he said, hey, I see you have no bread. I have a bakery. I can supply you with bread. And the other guy said, how much? And he said, how much do you need? And so he actually put his bakery to full production like it had never been before. He had a piece of machinery worth $75,000 that he bought because he thought he would need it, and then he never had the volume where he would need it. And all of a sudden, he could use that, and he's supplying all the bread for this grocery store, and he's making sure he's establishing a friendship with the manager and with the purchaser, because he's determined that when this crisis is over, he's still going to provide the bread to his grocery store. So right now, he's making 8 to 9 times the business he was making before, because he's resourceful, right? Now, the people who worked in these restaurants where he was before, right, where he was delivering to before, a lot of their servers are out of work, or all of their servers are out of work. So some of them are actually helping him deliver. And some of them are also actually employees in his bakery now. And so in Spanish, we have this phrase, when the river is turbulent, it's the gain of fishermen, because it's easier to fish. And so a lot of people are going to do well during this time. And it's going to be the people who are at an emotional, mental, and activity level where they can take advantage of opportunities at this time. But that guilt definitely creeps up. And what I have noticed, and if you have been following me for a while, it's probably not going to be news to you, that I have struggled with some form of anxiety for most of my adult life. So I have to be very zealous in not allowing that. And I have noticed the doorway, the gateway to anxiety is the guilt. I'll be having an amazing day because I'm really happy the boys are home. We are used to homeschooling. We have great feng shui, as you may imagine. So our home is very pleasant. It's a dream home. And so we are having a great time. And at times I find myself, that guilt creeping in, and I find myself thinking or feeling, it's not right. It's not right to feel good or to feel happy when people are dying. It's not right to be doing so well. And that doorway opens, and then all sorts of negative emotions, including anxiety, start to creep in. And then there's like this dwindling spiral, So I have to be super careful because of that history. And everybody should be careful with that. And so I want to tell you this. It's good to have compassion, right? It's a very good thing to have compassion, especially when that compassion leads you to take some action that can be helpful to others. So if out of that compassion, you are making masks at home because you like to sew and you're good with that, if you are sending money to people who are trying to help in some way or another, if you are helping people, maybe buying groceries for people who cannot get out of the house right now and dropping them on their front porch. But compassion can be very destructive if all you're doing is suffering with the other, because you not being happy doesn't help anybody, right? And so today we're going to talk about 5 strategies to go through this time and do well. And we're going to go by the 5 elements. So in Feng Shui, we have the 5 elements that are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. And each of these is related to a negative emotion. So water is fear. And wood is anger. And fire is trying to do too much, being a workaholic. Worry and anxiety is for earth. And grief is for metal. And most people, they're going through some of these emotions right now. And so the positive side, the happy flip side of the elements, for water is responsibility. So the opposite of fear is not courage. The antidote to fear is not courage. It's responsibility. And if you think about it, the more responsibly you act, the less there is to fear. Let me repeat that. The more responsibly you act, the less there is to fear. So you can see that, right? And so that's the one that is water, right? Now, if we move on to wood, the wood element is related to anger, right? And the opposite of anger is not peace, happiness, or calm, it's action. People usually feel angry when this energy surges that is begging to be put to use, to be put to work. And when they don't do it, it comes out as anger. And then we move on to fire. And fire, the fire element has to do with um, two extremes. One is working too hard, working too much, and the other one is becoming despondent or apathetic. And so the positive side of that is just to feel contented, to have contentment. And if you move to the earth element, that's worry, or it also includes anxiousness, right? And the opposite of anxiety and worry, that is reflection, being able to have clear thoughts. And for the metal element, grief is the negative, and nostalgia is the positive one. So nostalgia is that bittersweet feeling that you get when you look at your losses, the things that you have lost in the past. We all have losses, and we're all going to have losses. That's the nature of life. But pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. Suffering is when you wallow in the pain. And so in Feng Shui, we never aim to get over grief. We aim to transmute the grief into nostalgia. The strategies that you can have, right? We're going to have element by element. The first strategy has to do with money because the water element, which rules career in Feng Shui and is related to the emotion of fear and its positive counterpart, which is responsibility, is also related to money because money is currency, right? Flow. And if you think about it, money behaves like water. People say, I spend the money like it was water running through my fingers. They say money just went down the toilet. And there's a lot of associations of money with water because money is currency. One of the things that we're experiencing right now is a lot of fear around money because a lot of people are unable to work. A lot of people are afraid they're going to get fired. A lot of people are afraid they're not going to be able to sustain their businesses. So there's a lot of fear about this uncertainty about the future, right? And money is an energy that comes from the future. It doesn't matter how much money you have right now. If you can see money coming from the future, you're going to have fears around money. Because money, you can only have peace of mind around money when you can see it's going to come from the future, right? And so one of the problems we're having right now is that they have found the coronavirus in money. And so if you go to the grocery store, the employees that are not wearing gloves, if you pay them with cash, they're going to put on gloves to handle that cash. They actually have found the coronavirus in money. And somebody was telling us the other day that in China, the government is actually asking people to surrender their paper money and they're burning it. And then, so the person submits the money and then they enter the digits in their bank account so that everything is going to be digital now because there's this idea the money is contaminated. And we often have this idea that money is dirty. So what can you do with your money before you do this cure that I'm going to teach you today? They recommended that you spray your money with 70% alcohol. Not low because that won't kill the virus, not higher because if there's too much alcohol and not enough water, there's not going to be a absorption of that substance into the bill in order to kill the coronavirus. And so the first thing that you're going to do, the first strategy that I want to share with you is of having a money stash at home. It's important that you have a money stash at home, as important as it is that you keep a full pantry. Because if there was a circumstance when you could not access your bank for whatever reason, you need to have money in hand, right? And so, because as many of you know, I grew up in Ecuador, which is the developing world. So there have been circumstances in Ecuador where the banks closed. And the government froze all the money of everybody in the banks. So if you didn't have cash in hand, you couldn't function. So these things can happen. And so it gives us a lot of security to have a stash of money in the house. Your stash ideally should be hard for you to access. So it should be easy for you to put the money in it, but it should be hard for you to take the money out. And so you can YouTube how to make a secret money stash at home. And this gives people a lot of peace. My students and clients that do it, they immediately see an increased level of confidence regarding money and decreased fears regarding money. And so during the time of the coronavirus, and maybe at any time, it would be a good idea to actually spray the bills, right? Always, always, always wash your hands after handling money. It's super important to do that. And so the idea is that every week you insert a little bit of money into your money stash. And that is one way that you can deal with all these fears that are popping up about money. You're probably hearing my cat, my son's cat, meowing in the background. She's perfectly fine. She's just looking for him. Whenever he's not home, she looks and looks for him, and she sounds like she's in real trouble. The next one would be the wood element. Oh, somebody asked how much money should be in the stash. I think that in the United States, you probably should have about $1,000 at home, but you're not going to start there. You need to start where you are. If everything that you can contribute is $1 per week, do the $1 a week. If you can do 5, you can do 20, you can do 100, better, but just try and put some money in every week and try and use the same amount. So every week $1 until you feel like you can do every week $5 until you feel you can do every week $10, right? And I know it sounds kind of silly. It kind of sounds like you're in a spy movie, so you need to have a stash of money, right, in case you need to leave the country in a hurry. But it just gives you so much peace. And I have experimented with having the stash and then not having it and having it again, and I can tell you there's a huge difference there. So we move on to the wood element. And the wood element has to do with, is a representation of the forest or the living tree. And the wood element is the one that's related to anger, right? And you're going to feel angry. A lot of people, isn't that something? She actually sounds like there's something wrong with her. And that's his name. She says Marau. That's how she calls him. She's perfectly fine, I swear. And so I have a hard time concentrating now. Okay, so the wood element has to do with anger. And anger, the energy of the wood element is an energy that rises. And if you don't put it to act, if you don't turn it into action, it explodes as anger, right? You're going to feel angry because right now you're having a lot of restriction from the outside. The government is telling you cannot go out. So, okay, so you have to stay home, but the government is closing the parks. The government is closing the beaches, so you're going to feel, especially if you have issues with authority, this may be a really hard time for you because it may be a reminder, how some adult when you were growing up restricted your moves, like getting grounded and stuff like that. And so that anger is going to rise. So you have to have things to do. And for this, what I recommend that you do is, first, that you have plenty of food. You should have a stocked pantry at all times. And the other thing is you should have a pantry of activities. So you should have a notebook, a piece of paper, or even notes in your phone or your computer where you have a pantry, a stash of things to do, things that need to be done that are important but not urgent. I actually call that the procrastination list, and we use it in my programs on decluttering to help people declutter. And so it's a list of 7 to 12 items that are very important that you do them, but they're not urgent. And so what you do with this list is you read it in the morning when you first wake up, and you read it at night before you go to sleep. And you don't read it with an intention to get anything done. You read it with the intention of doing nothing at all. You're just feeding your subconscious mind with this list of things that are important to do. And you will see that as time goes on, as the days go by, every time that you feel this anger rising, your mind is going to tell you, oh, how about we clean the windows? How about we fix that tile that was coming off? How about we glue those shoes? How about, and so having this list is going to make sure that you don't waste your time and that you always have, sometimes you have that nervous energy that you have to put into action. So this is going to ensure that that energy goes somewhere. Okay, so moving on to the fire element. For the fire element, there's the two negative things was become despondent or apathetic, like nothing matters, nothing can be done, I'm just not doing anything. And that is akin to depression, right? And the other negativity around the fire element could be that you are like, oh my gosh, I have to do everything. And I see some people right now, there's like, this is a great time to be productive. This is a great time to finish my book. This is a great time to revamp my business. This is a great time to do my spring cleaning. And it may not be the best time to do that because you have to pay attention to your physical needs, your emotional needs, and your spiritual needs. And so, though it may seem that a lot of people are posting things on social media of everything you should be doing, right, to keep yourself busy, but it may not be the right time for you. It may be that what your spirit needs, what your soul needs, is to just have peace and to have enjoyment and contentment, right? So the contentment is the positive side of the fire element, having joy, feeling joyful about life. And the way you do that is by connecting with heaven and by connecting emotionally with the people that are important to you. And so connecting with heaven, right, means that you're going to need, if you've never meditated, you're going to have to start now. You're going to have to do a little bit of meditation. If sitting down to meditate or lying down to meditate is just too antsy for you, then try Tai Chi or try Qigong. Try something that is going to help you settle your mind, okay? And clear your mind and clear your heart. And look for connections. I know, sometimes the reason the guilt creeps up for me from being so happy during the time of the coronavirus is because I know people who live alone. And I think about all the people who live alone, who maybe their only human contact is when they go out, right? And now they don't have any human contact. Now, if you're an introvert, this time I'd be like, oh man, I can stay home every day, and I don't even have to justify it, right? But if you get a benefit from it interacting with other people, right now it could be a really hard time for you. So we were talking earlier before we started recording that maybe the term self-isolation was a bad name because, yes, social distancing, yes, but this is not a good time for isolation. This is a time when you need to be contented, right? So someone says, I live alone and I'm very happy right now. Yes, I was thinking of you when I said that. Some people are just going to be delighted. They don't have to justify to anybody why they're not going out and they're just having a great time and nobody's invited them to parties, so they don't have to come up with reasons to not go or force themselves to go, right? But it's important that you reach out to the people who are important to you. So make that phone call, send that text, do that video chat. Stay connected and stay connected to keep your heart fed. So we move on to the, in terms of Feng Shui, right? In terms of what you do in your Feng Shui is add a little bit of red if you can, or add pyramids or anything that has triangles. And so right now you can't go shopping, right? You can't go shopping and say, I want to get a red candle to add more fire to my home. So what you can do is just draw a red triangle about 2 inches per side, equilateral triangle, and fill it in with the color red, and just put it in your living room or family room. It doesn't have to even be visible. You just add symbolically add that fire element there, right? So we move on to the earth element. And so the earth element is worries, obsession, anxiousness, which there's going to be a lot of that right now. Now, when does worry, anxiousness, when these things happen, when you are actually going like your mind is going like a hamster in a wheel, thinking the same thoughts over and over and over and not resolving anything. That's when worries and anxiousness are at their peak. And so you're thinking, I have this problem And then you think, maybe this, maybe that. And then 10 minutes later, the thought comes up, I have this problem, and you go over the same thoughts over and over, right? So that's not going to solve anything. The good side of the earth element is to have reflection, to have peace. And so what you can do feng shui wise is you can be more connected to the ground. So if you have a backyard, spend time in your backyard. Of course, you can also spend time in your front yard. But right now, being in the front yard is not as good as being in your backyard. If you have a balcony, spend time in your balcony. If you live in an apartment where you don't have a balcony, if you are in a high rise, make sure to open your windows. Right now, part of the planet is in spring and part of the planet is in fall. There's a lot of beautiful sounds from nature. So especially right after sunrise and right before sunset, open your windows so that you can listen to the singing of the birds. Singing is a really good thing to counteract these feelings of anxiousness and being worried and feeling obsessive about things. So if you like to sing, sing, and even if you don't like to sing, maybe try a little singing, or try listening to music that gives you peace. Earlier, somebody had asked, what is the kind of music I recommend right now? And I have a favorite musician. So there's an album he has called Salome, which is piano music, alpha waves, very, very relaxing. And then there's one that is very instinctive-like, is drums of passion. So what you want right now is alpha music or drums. If your issues are more like you worry, like it's too much thinking, then definitely piano, alpha waves music. If your issue is that you get so upset that you feel it in your body, you know how sometimes you're so upset you feel like you're going to have indigestion, or you're so upset that you feel a constriction, or you feel stress in your body, then the drums, and if you can move a little bit to the drums, that's also very important. So moving on to the metal element. The metal element is about grief. And there's going to be a lot of grief, and grief is super important in the times of the coronavirus. So the coronavirus, so the question is, what singers do you like? She's not my favorite singer, but sometimes when I'm teaching, I see these mental images of what to recommend. And I saw Mariah Carey for some reason. She's not my favorite singer. I mean, I love how she sings, but she's not my favorite singer. It could be Celine Dion. So the singers we call divas and the tenors right now. So like the super high and the super low is what you would be looking for, right? So the super high for this energy center, the super low for the belly energy center. Those are the things you would be looking for. So the metal element is about grief, and the coronavirus affects the lungs. And so a lot of people have this idea, like a lot of people in the healing communities have this idea that viruses move things, that not everything about a virus is negative, that when a virus comes in, it's because there's a certain emotion that needs to be moved. And so this is from parents, this is not scientific. Like, as you know, I was sharing with you before, most of their lives we have been homeschooling our kids. And we have been in touch with a lot of people who were homeschooling their kids. And this is what we have heard from just about every parent that spends a lot of time with their children, that every time their child had some respiratory condition that came with a fever, there was a growth spurt. Like they would be out a day or two from the fever. And whenever they got up, they were taller. But not just that, their cognitive abilities improved. For example, things that they could not understand before, they could understand. Huge jumps in their motor skills and vocabulary. And so this is just from parents, like I don't know if you ever experienced that with your kids, but that's what we have heard from a lot of homeschooling parents, that they have noticed. And so that led them to wonder if maybe the virus has some other function than making us sick, right? And this virus seems like, quote unquote, engineered to affect the lungs. The structure of the virus goes like after it has like the kind of structure that affects the lung cells more directly than other parts of the respiratory system. And so it is a virus symbolically connected with grief, because the lungs are the organs in the body that are connected with grief. Have you ever noticed how when young people break up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, they catch a cold right after? The respiratory system, and especially the lungs, are associated with grief. And so what you can do in terms of feng shui, right, for to create this transmutation into, of grief into nostalgia, is that you can work with photos. Like, you can go through your photos, that's a good thing to do. You can go on a trip down memory lane by looking at your photos. You can reevaluate the photos of family that you put in your home. One thing that I believe you should do is you should not have pictures in your home in prominent places of extended family who are not kind to you. And so I have had clients that had complained to me that the mother-in-law was very intrusive in their life. And when I went to their home, they had a huge portrait of the mother-in-law in a very prominent place. And so look at the photos and see what stories your photos are telling, and maybe think about rearranging them. I do have a course. If you're interested in that course, just send me an email and I'll give you information about that. But I have a course on forgiveness and family photos. And so we learn to forgive through making special arrangements with particular templates for family photos. And the testimonials and the feedback I have gotten from that course are just amazing. So for the metal element, work with your photos and also work with metal. One thing that you should be doing right now is you should be polishing your metals, especially your doorknobs, with disinfecting wipes, right? Because that is one thing that that's the thing that gets touched all the time, right? And so just for basic hygiene, you should probably at least once a week be cleaning all your doorknobs anyway. So there's Janet says, Sarah Brightman for high, a good one, and Andrea, I don't know how to pronounce it, Bocelli for love. So Sarah Brightman for high notes and Andrea Bocelli for low. So that's Janet's recommendation. I'm not familiar with Sarah Brightman, but look her up. And so the idea is for you to create not just your little piece of heaven in your home, your little corner of paradise, no matter what is happening around you. But the idea is for you to also lift the vibration of your home with everything in it, so that you are actually not coexisting in the same existential vibrational plane where the most critical coronavirus problems are happening. When you think about it, the coronavirus is not a very aggressive virus. Most people are getting it mild. This virus is going to prepare us, is going to teach the world how to handle a pandemic. This is it's kind of like, you really use the word blessing for this. But the fact that the first time we're dealing with a global pandemic, it's a virus like the coronavirus, is not a bad thing, because it's not affecting really badly large portions of the population. Imagine if it was a virus that affected everybody, that we had 50% of the people affected in critical condition, right? And so this virus is going to teach us how to deal with a pandemic. And if this ever happened again, that I hope it doesn't happen in our lifetimes, but if it ever happened again, we're going to be a lot more serious about quarantining right away, right? Because there was a lot of doubt, wondering, should we do it, should we not? And now we know that if we had done this social distancing sooner, we'd probably be in a better place right now. I have created this system to practice Feng Shui, which is called the 9 Steps to Feng Shui system. And the way we do it is we do it online. I only give people one task at a time, so there's no overwhelm. And they post photos. They show me photos of how they did it, so that I can confirm it was done right. So there's no chance for making mistakes. There's no overwhelm. There's no chance of making mistakes, and there's sure certain progress. And so they're working on turning their homes into dream homes, one task at a time. And we do this all online. I'm really happy that about a decade ago, I had the foresight to move my business from a local business model to an online business model, because right now my life is changing very little. In the United States, about the average charge for a Feng Shui consultation is $300 for a person to look at your space for about an hour, maximum 2 hours. So I charge the same, but I charge for the whole month. So I charge what other consultants charge for an hour, I charge for the whole month. So also send me an email if you would like me to give you more information about doing a long distance Feng Shui consultation. It is a really transformative process, a really beautiful process. And one of the consequences is that families become stronger and couples become stronger because while they're going through the Feng Shui process, while they're going through the 9 steps to Feng Shui, they are defining what their own taste. I don't tell people what to do. I help them discover what they want to do so that they end up loving their space. It has to be their dream home, not my dream home, right? And for your home to be a dream home, it doesn't have to be a mansion. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be luxurious. It just has to be able to provide you with what you need to be happy. Remember, to go by the elements, get your money stashed, get your pantry or laundry list of things to do that are important but not urgent, so that you can channel the energy that otherwise would become anger. And listen to music that is going to stimulate your energy center around the head or your energy center around the belly. Draw a triangle and fill it up with the color red if you need to add more of the fire element. The fire element is about socializing, and right now socializing is limited, so probably everybody's going to need to add a little bit of fire. Open your windows to listen to the birds, especially at sunrise and sunset. If you have a backyard, go lie down on the grass or stand or walk barefoot on the grass to get grounded. That's very important for the earth element. And for the metal element, work with your photos, and let me know if you would like me to give you more information on the course about forgiveness. The idea is for you to lift your energy, the energy of your home, so that things don't affect you the same. And then you have to guard yourself to those feelings of guilt that might creep in because you're doing well at a time when most people are not doing well.